There are different strategies that companies use to develop a marketing budget. For example, a percentage of revenue was the common standard for setting a marketing budget in the past. However, companies now have embraced alternatives like goal-driven budgeting. The following are a few ways you can calculate the marketing budget for your organization, such as revenue-based budgeting, competition matching, top-down, goal-driven. These strategies may also depend on industry verticals, geographies, etc. Given the surge in digital marketing, the ability to measure the effectiveness of marketing spend has also improved, paving ways to explore different strategies for marketing spend. In this section, we are going to discuss a very pertinent topic, and that is strategies for marketing spend. So without further ado, with utmost pleasure, it's time to invite our guests to throw some light on this topic. Mr. Prateep Dasgupta is the Data and Analytics Director with BCG Gamma. He specializes in consumer and marketing analytics. In his current role, he leads the marketing and business development initiative for Gamma A globally. Welcome, sir. Thank you very, very much for joining in. It's absolutely a pleasure to host you.
Thank you, Pooja.
Up next, we have Mr. Nakul Puri, a Senior Data and Analytics Manager at BCG Gamma. He has an experience in developing and implementing advanced analytics solutions for Fortune 500 clients. At BCG, he is leading the analytics practice for retail and industrial goods. He specializes in use of machine learning to estimate the true value that marketing organizations drive. So with all these credits, it's time to invite Mr. Nakul Puri. Thank you so much, sir, for joining in. It's like I said, it's absolutely a pleasure.
Thanks, Pooja.
All right, so it's time to take the discussion forward. Over to you, Mr. Dasgupta.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Pooja. Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me here. So today, along with Nakul, what we'll attempt to do is take you through the BCG's framework of how we actually do ROMI or return on marketing investment, and also how or what are some of the best strategies to optimize the marketing spend. Next slide, please. So I think the quote here actually summarizes a perennial problem that is faced by marketers, and the digital boom has actually only intensified it further. So putting this in perspective, pre-pandemic, we actually stood at about 57% internet penetration globally, with nearly 600 billion in ad spends, and of which 50% was mostly digital. Amongst the largest in terms of advertising spends is the US, accounting for almost 38% of the total global spending. Pre-pandemic, US advertising comprised of nearly 3% of the US GDP. So you can imagine what a big portion of their spends was in ad and more in digital. So what does this really imply? One can easily claim that those days are gone where marketing was treated as a budget item, and like all budget items, the first casualty of any budget cuts. The marketing landscape has now exploded as companies try and aggressively compete for that precious customer attention. It is important to know as a marketer where to invest the next dollar to both maximize returns and yet maintain the brand pedigree. Let us now take the help of this simplified marketing funnel to really understand the conundrum faced by marketers worldwide. The ever-shrinking purchase funnel outlines the industry's movement from measurement at an aggregated market level data, which is more strategic investments, to more consumer level data, the closer you move to the conversions, where marketers aim to be hyper-personalized with their campaigns and offer rollouts. While many businesses were already shifting more resources towards becoming digital, what we have seen in these last 2 years, that this movement has been intensified with the onset of the global pandemic. Now, what was once a discretionary self-paced transformation has actually become an urgent priority for them. So what we are currently witnessing is a heightened push towards the digital revolution or the transformation of sorts, and increase spending in digital marketing with an aim to optimize all future investments in this area. This, however, brings or highlights another hotly debated topic. In the face of digital transformations, is traditional marketing really dead? If so, then why do conglomerates still spend millions on traditional media spends and other static and analog ads, as you can see on the top half of the funnel, as these throw up still more challenges on how to integrate the strategies towards measurement, and how we can have a great and an accurate read of both traditional and digital media competing for the same incremental dollar growth. To top this all off, the recent and deepened focus on privacy has actually thrown yet another wrench in the works in terms of data collection to accurately measure marketing effectiveness, siloed tech stack, unavailability of a robust mechanism to collect credible first-party data, and over reliance on traditional on-prem platforms for data storage are slowing down marketers in a time where they actually need to be more agile. However, this calls for a separate discussion in itself. Today, we will touch upon some of the campaign measurement related challenges and BCG's approach to solve for them. Next slide, please. Great. So the first two problems here are associated with core measurement in itself. As marketing experts, you would have unprecedented access to the world-class algorithms and the utmost granular data of your clients, or if you're an in-house operation of your own conglomerate. Even so, there is no foolproof way of estimating the return on marketing investment. Existing strategies and approaches are typically biased either towards offline media, your traditional market mix models, or digital media, which could be your multi-touch attribution models. What we will attempt to do here today is provide a comparative analysis which would guide brand managers and CMOs as they choose the best way to measure marketing effectiveness for both their offline and online campaigns. The next set of problems is, once you do have a robust mechanism to measure campaigns in place, how do you really use it? Or how do we plan for your next phase of strategizing? So instead of reporting raw coefficients and static visuals, what we will aim to do is design a simulator enabling brand managers to play around with different tactics and scenarios, helping them simulate different strategies, downplay or overextend investment across campaigns till they land on an optimal budget allocation. Now let us explore the overall setup of the marketing organization and the underlying components of the campaign management. What we see here on this slide is measurement is the very core of the marketing budget allocation. The basic building block is the availability of reliable data itself flowing from both traditional media, such as print, TV, billboards, out of home, etc., and more digital streams like the clickstream data, social media, banner ad campaigns, etc. The analytical framework, which is the key component of the discussion today, forms the next layer, and it involves prepping the data for modeling, followed by the actual predictive modeling process itself, and then the optimization phase that helps formulate the optimal allocation of that budget. All these results are then transcribed into reporting dashboards, self-serve tools such as the simulators for the consumption of the brand heads and the CMOs. This is finally topped by the strategy layer that, in conjunction with the business objective, use these insights to drive the decision making. I will now hand it over to Nakul, who will deep dive into the actual analytics of campaign measurement.
Thanks, Prateep, for giving the context. Now let's double click on the analytical framework which Prateep outlined. So we start with data. So for whatever measurement framework we have to build for any marketing efforts, it's very important to know what your consumers are buying. And secondly, what they're consuming as marketing messages regarding your product, your brand. So when we talk about data, we always start with performance. How do you measure the performance of a business? For one group of organizations, it could be the profit. For the others, it could be the revenue or volume. And if we talk about different industries, they have very different KPIs that they optimize for. Let me take an example of telecom. They would be more interested in acquisition and churn, whereas an automobile company would be more interested in getting the qualified leads, how their marketing is helping them generate qualified leads. So depending upon which organization you are helping in terms of managing their marketing budget, it becomes very important to finalize the performance metric. Once we have done that, next is getting the marketing data. There are broadly two classifications, traditional media and digital media. And as we speak, the line between the two is blurring. The traditional media, what we call is television, out of home, radio, print, cinema, whereas digital media is your digital displays, paid search, organic search, affiliate search, and social media. There is whole new world of influencer-based marketing, which is there on social media. And it is becoming a very, very significant part of the marketing portfolio that an organization has. Lastly, but not the least, external factors. Now, what are they? They could be brand health surveys. What's your brand recall? What's the brand advocacy? What's the purchase intent? These are all survey-based methods which can be plugged into the analytical data set and be used for modeling, just to know how much impact they have on your final outcome. Then there are macroeconomic conditions. Over the last 1.5 years, almost every client we have worked with have one single most important question: how they should be thinking about advertising budgets in a post-pandemic world. Because pandemic has shifted the way we are consuming information, and this is true for everyone. And the strategy needs to be agile in order to adapt to this. Hence, it becomes very, very important that we plug this into our measurement framework so that our strategy is future-proof. Once we have all this data, we harmonize it into an analytical data set, which is used for the purposes of predictive modeling. And let's see what kind of models we have to build to get the right measurement. Whenever we talk about analytical models for estimating the effectiveness of marketing channels, we break it into two parts. One is a top-down approach. And what the top-down approach does is, it is similar to your traditional mixed models. Firstly, it isolates the impact of each advertising channel that it has on the sales metric or the performance metric that we talked about. That is one. Two, it also gives us an estimate of where the spends are saturating and where we can reduce the investment levels, and what are those advertising channels where we can actually increase the investment. Now let's take an example of a recommendation coming from a top-down model. I can, from my model, see that the CRM activities that the client is doing is actually performing well. And I can give a recommendation, increase the investment by 100%, double the investment there. But that does not mean that they were sending me one mail a day, they start sending me 2 mails a day. Now that's not what it means. So strategic recommendations stops at recommending what should be the right investment levels to the granularity of a market, brand, advertising channel, campaign level. It stops there. How to make it more actionable? That is where the bottom-up model comes up, where you actually look at consumer level behavior. You have the data right down to the consumer level. You analyze the right frequency, the right sequence, the right interval between two touch points, and recommend what kind of messages should be sent to which individual. So we are not talking about consumer segments here. The power of data and algorithm has now allowed us to actually go down to an individual level and recommend the right messaging for them in order to drive conversions, which essentially helps business grow. And if I have to do a comparative analysis as to the different algorithms that are available in the market, this is purely basis our own experience. We have listed down the algorithms that we typically use for top-down as well as bottom-up models. So the top-down are the ones where you see strategic insights, and the bottom-up is the one where we see tactical insights. Just a quick summary. As you see that we are moving from strategic to tactical, you will see that the data granularity has increased. We are working with more granular data when it comes to tactical insights. And also the degree of prescriptive analytics increases. Because in a strategic, as I told you earlier in the previous slide, that when you talk about strategic recommendations, you recommend what should be the right investment levels across different advertising channels. But when you talk about tactical, you're basically telling them how to message, how to send messages across different consumers. That's as actionable as tactical as one can get. And lastly, you take a hit on the interpretability once you move from strategic to tactical. Why this happens? Because when you do it at an aggregated level, it's easy to generalize the behavior and put it in a form of an equation. Whereas once you go to individual levels, it's very difficult to generalize. Every individual behaves differently. And that's what these algorithms try and capture. And what we have covered between strategic, if I just have to give you our preferences in terms of what we use when we build strategic models, we typically lean more towards Bayesian networks. Why? Because of two components. One, anyone who has developed a measurement framework would agree to this, that building a market mix model is less of science and more of art. And Bayesian networks allows us to bake in expert opinion in terms of intelligent priors. That's one. Two, in the interconnected world that we live in, it's not that I look at a television ad and straight away go and make a purchase. At times I look at a television ad, then I go on Google and search it. Now, this interplay is very well captured by Bayesian networks because it represents the whole relationship in a form of a network, which is interconnected. And that's how the real world behaves. Hence, we kind of lean towards Bayesian networks here. Now, coming to the tactical insights, usually we activate the recommendations that we have got from strategic models by using personalization and demand-centric growth. And over the course of this presentation, we will touch upon these topics again towards the later half. Now, once the models are built, what we do next? We optimize and we plan for the marketing budget. Before we look at how it's done at a strategic level, let's understand how optimization takes place. So we create an equation and we assume that marketing spend has a non-linear relationship with the sales. And consider in your universe, there are just two channels, TV and print. And these are the existing spend levels. When I look at these graphs, I clearly see that print is it's a line which is already saturated, and TV is a steeper curve. And if I have to put my money, I'll take out money from print and add it to television. Something like this. I take out some delta spend from print and add it to the television. Let's see how does it impact the sales. Now what we see here is the sales that increased because we increased investment in television compensates the loss of sales that happened because we took out spend from print. This is just one example, but how the optimizer actually works, it works across thousands and thousands of such response curves and do this reallocation and gives us the best possible combination after taking into account the business constraints. Now, when the marketer plans the budget, they can look at it in two ways. One is spend-based optimization, as in they put a cap on the spend. They have a fixed budget and they would like to maximize the revenue. Something which is happening on the right-hand side of this graph, where we have said more for same. You have the same budget, but you try and maximize the revenue by reallocating it across different advertising channels. On the other hand, the client could always come back and say, I have a revenue target to meet. And what is the minimum investment required to meet that target? And that is where you go for same for less kind of a methodology, where you try and put a cap, okay, this is the revenue that we have to hit and minimize the investment. The objective changes, but essentially both these kind of approaches are used in tandem to design the budget for the upcoming year. Once we have the optimization done, it's very, very important to package it into a form of a dashboard, a monitoring tool, which the client can use. Now, it's not that one size fits all. there are different players when it comes to planning the marketing budget. There are brand managers, there are category managers, there are technical managers as well. Everyone have different KPIs and they need different views and different dashboards to look at. And hence personalizing those views becomes very, very important. Secondly, whatever recommendations we have given and they have implemented, they need to monitor it on a continuous basis, because some of them would work and some of them might not. And then that goes as a feedback to the algorithm, where they revisit the coefficients and the optimization model and the constraints to come up with the new budget strategy. Let us just quickly have a look at a tool that we have developed. So this is something that we deliver. It's like a leave behind tool that we, it's a prototype at the end of the day, but this is similar to what we deploy at client's end, where they can actually look at different metrics and run a simulation. So if I go to the simulation page, while it's loading, it will have the same components that we discussed about. You can think about goal-based optimization, where you essentially select upon a brand and here it asks for the target revenue. And then there is spend-based optimization, where again you select the brand, and if you select the brand, you can give an investment budget. Oh, okay, yeah. Now suppose historically we have spent 19.9 million and it is driving 119 million in revenue. That's an ROI of 6. Suppose I say that let me have the same budget and I set a default constraint. Now these default constraints mean every marketing channel can take a 20% cut in their existing spend levels or take a 20% increase in their existing spend levels. And I run this simulation. Now what it will do is, underlying these marketing channels, there would be different campaigns, and it will try and reallocate the investment across these different channels. And as an outcome, what should come is that with the same level of investment, that is 19.9 million, now we are able to generate 124.3 million revenue. That is roughly a 5-10% increase in what we were getting earlier. So this is how spend-based optimization and goal-based optimization works. And one final thing is what if simulation. A lot of times marketers will have their own plan and they would like to know, what if I put that plan in here, how will they stack up against what the optimizer is recommending or what historically has happened? So this becomes another key element which marketers enjoy in terms of planning their marketing budget. With that, I'll hand it back to Prateep to take us through, once these recommendations are made, how client can actually use them successfully.
Thank you, Nakul. Great. So now, by now you should have a grasp of the measurement mechanism. It is also important to underline the role of tech and org in making any strategy successful. At BCG, we believe that the algo is only 10% of the overall strategy. A tech layer, including having a unified data platform, ad tech to enable seamless digital campaigns, ability to ingest copious amounts of first and third party data, forms the next 20%. And finally, the remaining 70% is the org design itself, which can include change management to ensure that it is a data first organization with agile business processes, and the training and mindset to absorb and act on these insights generated. Without that, it is just a mathematical box throwing out some coefficients and dashboards at the end of the day. Let us now move to an actual case study where we were asked to re-engineer the marketing budget for an alcohol manufacturer. To give you some client context, the client, as the title suggested, is one of the top manufacturers of alcohol beverages with revenues upwards of 2.5 billion euros. The manufacturer's portfolio boasts of 20 plus brands across different product categories. From a geographical standpoint, they have a global presence, but our study focused on their pan-European business. The current state of affairs involved a siloed marketing strategy wherein each brand manager ran his or her own operation through their independently selected ad or digital agencies. Because of the decentralized nature of these operations, there was a very low accountability of the ROI per dollar spent and no robust mechanism or math for ad attributions. The strategies across brands wasn't cohesive, with some brands only relying on more traditional advertising channels. As such, BCG was called in to create a cohesive marketing strategy for the overall brand and re-engineer the current measurement process. Our first stop, which this slide enumerates, is pulling together a data cube from the available sources. As you can see on the slide, we had collected data from margin, sell-in, advertising, and marketing spend data as a part of their financials. Advertising metrics from traditional sources such as TV, print, GRPs, trade promotions, discounting activities, data from the promotion tactics such as couponing, BOGO, percentage off, etc. External and market variables included distribution data, competitor trade metrics, such as trade discount and SKU pricing for competitors, market trend, holidays, and seasonal sales variations. We also included sellout volumes across time and qualitative measures such as brand health surveys to round off the entire data collection process. Next slide, please. Now, once the data is cleaned, harmonized, and transformed, we proceed to the next step where we actually create a training and a test data set. This is done as we not only rely on core statistical fit tests, but also want our models to pass the test when it comes to out of sample and out of time validation. That is actually the true tests of how these models will hold up in a real life scenario. The training data is then run through an ensemble of ML models, which Nakul had just taken you through, to find the best fit and as well as the optimal ad stock or the DK transformations for the different marketing tactics. Once these models have been validated with the test data sets, the next step is to move towards the optimization phase, where we not only bake in the modeled coefficients, but also the business constraints as well. And these business constraints can be, for example, in certain geographies, you may not be able to sell beyond X million liters of alcohol in a calendar year. Or maybe some geographies do not encourage TV ads or certain advertising metrics in favor of alcohol beverages, etc. So all those constraints from different geographies, different business standpoints are baked in before the optimization model is run. The optimization models then give way to the simulator, which is actually a part of the self-service tools that also allows the brand managers to gamify their investments long after BCG has left and arrive at the optimal investment levels for each marketing tactic. Next slide, please. An additional cache of outputs in the form of a digital data studio is then created to help the brand managers and business managers understand how their brand and their marketing platform perform at a granular level. Some of these can be your volume decomposition waterfalls to identify the different sales drivers, your bubble charts to compare ROI and marketing spend across multiple promo tactics, geographies, and brands the way you want to set it up, response curves to find the different saturation levels for each of these marketing channels, and of course, last but not the least, the optimization models and the simulators to redistribute these marketing spends. We developed this with the client over 4 months in the past year, and by now they have realized a 5 to 10% revenue uplift across their 10 brands, which can directly be attributed to marketing effectiveness. While the slide loads, so this a very high model accuracy and the ability to scale models from geography X, geography into brand into channel level meant that we were able to reuse these results for the next round of planning as well. We are now in the process of automating this entire cycle with a feedback loop, like Nakul had suggested, so that these would help the clients refresh these models in time for the subsequent planning phases as well. So our project does not end with just delivering the outputs, but at the end, enabling the entire organization to reuse these coefficients, to use uh, the models that we have built over time till they become self-sufficient in terms of managing their marketing optimizations on their own. We have now successfully learned how to measure marketing effectiveness. The next question is, how can we tailor these campaigns to be more effective in increasing conversions, which ultimately is the final goal as well. With that, I would like to introduce a couple of different strategies or two use cases that we in BCG use in conjunction with MROI to augment conversions by personalizing the campaigns even further. Demand-centric growth, or DCG as it's called, is a survey-based technique that allow us to segment consumer choice, map the size of opportunity within each of these segments, which are also known as demand spaces, and then identify characteristics of consumers, their purchase occasions, and the share of competitors within each space. What this really allows us in conjunction with MROI is really help target better, personalize campaigns better, and more importantly, in time. Uh, Input to product design, which is another key output that emerges from this DCG survey-based techniques, which can allow uh, conglomerates to design their product better based on what the consumers want. And of course, more importantly, digital engagement of the consumers with the brand itself. Next slide, please. The next use case that we will go into is also survey-based. And what it really allows us to do is model consumer pathways and zero in on the most important purchase drivers and touch points to conversion. This helps us to evaluate channel stickiness, which informs how much do you actually need to spend in these channels apart from the saturation curves that MROI already provides. And also the evolution of the role of the store and how digital plays a role for that client in particular. So both these use cases used in conjunction with MROI can actually help you create that omni-channel or the harmonized retail presence that is so desired by brands world over. So with that, I would like to thank NASSCOM for the stage for Nakul and I to present. And I would like to hand this back to Pooja. Thank you.
So firstly, I would sincerely want to thank both of you. It was absolutely, I think the in-depth information that you shared was absolutely very commendable. Like you rightly said, times are changing. We all are very much aware. We need to be very quick and rapid. And I think 3 points that I could take back, and I'm sure all the audience will also take back, is 3 important questions were sort of answered. One is how to determine marketing spend. The second is the tools and the framework for tracking spend and measuring effectiveness. And the third is what kind of emerging strategies, like the best practices that we can use on the marketing spend. So I think these 3 very, very important questions were answered. And we sincerely thank you, both of you, for that. Thank you very much for taking out time and sharing this wonderful piece of information that I think is absolutely very much required in today's time. Thank you very much. Please take care.
Thank you, everyone.